Chris McCall, welcome to Ordinary Visionaries.
Hi, thanks
So,
for having me.
so Tris, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me about your vision.
Well, I live in Jersey City. Uh, I've been living here for a long time. Uh, really, since I've been in Hudson County, New Jersey since 1992. And while I've done a lot of writing and a lot of music, a lot of journalism, pretty much the entire focus of the stuff that I've done has been about where I'm at, what it means to be from here, what what it's like to live here, what we do when we talk to our ourselves about who we are. That's really what I've. That's really been the focus of everything that I've done. I've done a lot of journalism. I've done some fiction. I've made a lot of music. It's all basically on that subject. It's all basically been about.
What kind of music?
I've made my own music. I've made 4 albums under my own name. It's Tris McCall. Sometimes with a rock band, sometimes by myself. And I played in a number of other bands too, indie pop, indie rock, twee pop bands, My Teenage Stride, Overlord. I played with Palomar. Played a little
Wow.
bit, yeah. I played with a whole bunch of different
What,
bands.
what instrument do you play?
Synthesizers mostly,
Oh,
but
really?
yeah, sometimes I play guitar.
Yeah.
I'm not a very good guitar player. I think I'm better on synth than piano. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're a journalist and a musician,
Yes.
and that's how you make your living.
Well, if I had to make my living with money, but if I had to make money as a musician, I wouldn't really be able to do that. I mean, I think like most of the musicians that I know, it's a hard thing to do to make a living as a musician.
I
So
know.
while I have done, while we've sold records and played shows and done all the things that independent musicians do, um, we've never really made a lot of money doing that. I have always made my living as a writer, and that's going back to the '90s. I've always been a journalist, a writer, creative writer, and a reporter. And I've done that for a long, long time.
So let's dig deeper into your writing and the topic of your writing because I find what you're talking about very kind of different from the average writer. The average writer is reporting about happenings in the community, that kind of thing, or
Well,
about politics or whatever.
I think that whatever I've written about, I've tried to make that community the focus. So, for instance, for a long time, I did reviews of of rock shows. I was, in essence, a rock critic. I mean, still a rock critic. I read about rock music, pop music a lot. But whenever I would go to the show, my focus as someone who's covering the show, the first question that I asked myself was always, why are a whole lot of people from New Jersey in particular? First of all, why is the show being hosted in New Jersey?
Yeah.
And why are a whole lot of people from New Jersey going to see this show? So, and that could be a show that you see on a corner in a neighborhood. What is the relationship between this show and the neighborhood that's hosting it? Or it could be a show, record-setting, huge show at a stadium. Why have tens of thousands of people come to see this act? Why is this meaningful to? What does this tell us about who we are? So I'm really always asking the same questions, even though I do, I have a lot of opinions about the music, but I also, first, I'm always thinking about how it fits in to those larger questions about who we are as people who live in this state, in this community in particular, in Hudson County in particular. Yeah, and I still do that. Lately I've been doing, for the past 4 years, I've been almost entirely, well, not entirely, but I've been doing a lot of focus where I'm writing about visual art. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I've turned my attention very sharply back to the city where I live, Jersey City. And Jersey City has always been a visual arts town. We've always been a town with a lot of visual art, a lot of really interesting visual artists, a lot of really interesting visual art spaces. And visual art has always been the language that we've used in Jersey City to investigate who we are. It's the conversation about our identity is often presented visually, and it's written quite literally often on the walls of the city because it's a big mural project. But it's also in the galleries, and it's in the public happenings that we have, almost all of which are visual art related. So there came a point where I was like, I have really, if I want to talk about Jersey City, I really do have to focus on this. So yeah, that's music, politics, visual art, all that's architecture, all that stuff.
Well, all of that stuff has to do with the quality of life and the character of life in a particular place, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, since I've been here, Jersey City has changed quite a bit. When I first moved to town, when I first moved to Hudson County in '92, there was very little going on in the area in Jersey City where I live. Since then, it's become, in effect, a boomtown. There's been there's been construction on every available lot. There's been condominiums thrown up all over the place. The property value has gone up by many multiples, and that has been expressed by the artists. We've seen that in many ways, both by musicians and visual artists. There are traces of the transformation are legible and audible in all of that work. So that's a story that you're telling. So yeah, that's one way to talk about it, is quality of life. Whether our quality of life has been improved or the ways in which it's been improved since that transformation took place is an ongoing debate in the community. I mean, there are people who think it has, people who think it really hasn't.
Yeah, well, I live in quite a different place. I live in the middle of the woods in California.
Northern California?
Northern California, in a place called Boulder Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And
how close to San Francisco are you?
We're about an hour and a half south of San Francisco.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah.
I'm in the redwood forest above Silicon Valley. There's a big sort of mountain there between that and the Santa Cruz, which is a beach town.
Santa Cruz is a wonderful place. I love San Francisco. It's one of the places in America that I really adore and think very fondly of and always want to go to. I always love it. So when I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, so we used to we used to go. Are you an A's fan? Or are you?
I'm not a sports fan.
Not a sports fan. Yeah, I've always been a Giants fan, and we used to go to San Francisco pretty much every year to catch some games. And when they play "Lights," the Journey song in the 8th inning, as they often do at what is now called Oracle Park, lights go down in my city, I really do feel it. I'm like, my hands are. I really do. I take for that moment at least. I take great pride in being in Northern California. It's a beautiful place, a place that means a lot to me. There are a lot of places in America that are like that, and in my music, one of the things that I've done recently is I've done traveling and I've gone to different cities, and I've tried to write about those cities in the songs that I've written and how they make me feel. So there are many American cities that I'm extremely attached to. Richmond, Virginia is one of them. Charleston, South Carolina, certainly Baltimore. I love Baltimore. I love Northern and Southern California. There are a lot of places in America that I'm really attached to. Yeah.
So you tend to go to a place or and write about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I write about a lot of stuff too. I don't write about places. I write more about, aspirations and, I don't know if you read the piece that I sent yesterday.
I did.
That was generated by AI. I don't know if you noticed that at the bottom.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. But for me, it's always my own weird personality that comes through. I don't. Yeah. What I do is, or what I did with the project which is called the most recent project was called McCall's Almanac, which we're going to end up probably putting out sometime later this year. But I would go to a city, and I would come up with a character, a narrator, and then I would write the song and a short story from the same perspective. So the character in the short story is also the character who's narrating the song. And is in a particular place, and I try to make that place manifest in the in both the lyrics and also in the mood of the song. So, for instance, we have a Northern California song, which is maybe is my favorite of the songs, and it takes place in Napa, and the character and the story, the story is also one about the lead character in that song is a disgraced politician. He's kind of waiting for the other legal shoe to drop in Napa and kind of living the high life there while his constituents beckon.
And this is complete fiction, yes?
Complete fiction. They're all fictional characters. They all are, and some of them are. Some of the stories are kind of fantastic. For instance, the Miami Beach story takes place in the future, and there's a sci-fi element. The Wisconsin story, which is one that I really think which is a huge favorite of mine, is there's a demon who is one of the main characters of the story. And what we're going to do at the end of the year in Jersey City, I believe, is that we're going to bind these short stories into a book. And then we are going to play the songs, and the book will be available if anybody wants the book for a Christmas present for anyone. But the idea is that we'll try to get across the notion of the almanac and journeying around America and thinking about what it means. And we'll be doing that show probably someplace in downtown Jersey City. We did a show at Art House Productions, which is a new theater here, last year. And that went very well. And it makes me want to do it again because I do like having people clap for me and read my stories. Like, this would be a good way to do it. That's the idea. But
so you're really an artist, performer, writer, creator kind of person.
Done a lot of things not of equal,
yeah.
competence. Let's put it that way. There are definitely some things I'm better at than other things. Yeah.
Yeah. All my writing has been in the service of my business.
Yes. I saw. Yes. Yeah.
But so, I find this interesting because I notice, I've helped a lot of people do some writing in their business, write about their business and what they do and stuff like that. But the thing that I've noticed is people really struggle with writing.
Really, yeah, people really struggle with reading too. One of the things that's happened over the past few decades is that I've noticed that it's increasingly difficult to get people to read. And I take that seriously as a challenge. I try to make it so that what I'm writing is interesting, and I've tried to modify what I do to make it more fun for people to read, because I think sometimes I have a tendency to get in the weeds. As a journalist, I think you do that, but a lot of the things that I do write about can be, isn't exactly too popular. Writing about visual art is not really something that has an enormous audience, so I try to keep it as entertaining as I can. But yeah, it is. Writing is very tough. It is a strange occupation. It's a very solitary one. You're kind of cutting yourself off from people while you're doing it.
That's right.
It's one where you're kind of hunched over your computer during the day. You can get really absorbed and forget where you are, which isn't always that healthy. But it's also it also can be very rewarding if and when people read what you've written, and even sometimes if they don't, because you may have the satisfaction of going back to something that maybe was less popular, a piece that you wrote in future years, and seeing how rereading it yourself. William Gaddis, who's a writer who I respect very, very much, a wonderful novelist, said that he wrote so that he would have something interesting to read in his old age. And I read Gaddis's books
so he could read his own books in his old age.
Something interesting to read. And as a 20-year-old, I read Gaddis's books, and I read some interviews, and I remembered that. And now that I'm considerably older, sometimes I go back and I'm entertained by things that I read and I wrote when I was younger. So it is true. You can kind of sometimes you're your own best audience. But I do like to write for people. I wrote a novel in 2006. The novel came out in 2012. It was called The Trespassers. It's really everything I feel like I have to say to people is in that novel. And it is, yeah, it's what, oh, you're going to say?
Yeah, what's the heart of that novel? What's it about?
It's about a group of kids, 5 kids, who spend a summer breaking into abandoned buildings and taking photographs of those buildings. It's narrated by one kid who's not a photographer and not from New Jersey. He's from North Carolina, and he is in New Jersey for the summer, and he meets these other 4 kids, and they form a little group of rebels who do this. And the relationship between the kids and really between the main character's consciousness and the landscape is, to me, what the heart of the book is. Now, I've been told by many people that it's not a page turner, that it's a book that is not a that it is not, it's not popular fiction. I spend a lot of time on very thick description, which is maybe not the best way to excite people, but it excites me very much, and it's also what I had to say. And I feel like everything that I've said since then has been a restatement of something that was in The Trespassers. Only I don't think I've said it as well, but in many cases, I think people may have gotten the point better because I've learned how to make it more direct. People who don't have time to read a 90,000 word novel, they may have time to read 1,000 or to 3,000 word article, which is the bulk of what I do during the week. So yeah, it's the same stuff. It's just I'm coming at it from a different angle. Yeah.
So what were you trying to get across in that book? What were you trying to convey, and what did you want to leave the reader with? You know, the reader, you've got these kids breaking into buildings, taking photos. I mean, that's interesting.
To me, the book is about learning how to see the world around you, learning how to observe, and learning that all the details in the natural environment or the built environment are meaningful, and that the built environment is a kind of language. And I think those characters in different ways learn that language over the course of the book. It is also a book very much about the place, about post-industrial New Jersey, and what we stand to lose by losing old buildings, and what we can learn by engaging with the past and what the past might have to say to the present. So all of that stuff is really in there. And it is also very much a love story between 2 characters who are young and don't really know anything about love yet, but don't really realize their feelings until late in the book. But that is a big part of what makes the book is a love story that's set in between teenagers. You know, love between teenagers is a favorite topic, but it doesn't. I think probably the takeaway from the book for a lot of people is going to be about my interest in the beauty of the urban landscape and learning to see things that other people might think are garbage as worthy of your attention, and learning to see, just because everyone in the world says something is either out of date or useless or trash doesn't necessarily mean that that's true, that there's value to be found in engaging with the history of a place and in going deep and in paying very close attention. So I am asking the reader to pay close attention in a way that I might not always. Today's election day in Jersey City, and election day in Jersey City is always, and in New Jersey, and it's a primary election, Democratic primary, and it's always very, very hotly contested. So yesterday, I engaged with that by writing a couple of essays on the topic, and those were 2,000 words. It's a lot easier to read than a 90,000 word novel, but in essence, I was asking a lot of the same things that I was saying to The Trespassers about respect for history and who we are. Yeah.
So, we all have our interests and our passions. And something I've noticed about myself, like I'm kind of a very solitary person as well. I've been a one-person business for almost 40 years.
It can be very lonely.
Well, it wasn't lonely for me. I was I was reaching out to people. I was writing newsletters. But everything was my creation, just like yours is your creation. And you think something up and you put something out and you get a response, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's crickets. But this effort to try to communicate something that's important to you. I mean, there's a million things. There's a million domains in the world of possibilities.
Yeah.
So you've written about music as well, right?
Yeah, a lot about music.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that because I'm a jazz fan.
Oh, cool. We just finished the Jersey City Jazz Festival here, which is a homegrown festival that is now 11 years old. And when it started, it was just a couple of people playing horns in Riverview Fisk Park, almost without a stage. And now it is taken over the town. It's 5 days of jazz all over Jersey City. And northern New Jersey is a place where there's a long jazz history. And part of that is WBGO, which is the Newark radio station that does tons of jazz, is really responsible for jazz. Some of it that the clubs book jazz. NJ Pack, which is a wonderful theater, does a lot of jazz. And some of it is the proximity of a couple of educational institutions that are deeply involved in jazz. So, for instance, William Patterson University, Harold Mayburn taught there. A lot of jazz greats have been in that program, and a lot of really good young jazz players come out of that program. So there's a lot of real good, real deep jazz roots here. And the Jazz Festival is always a date on the local calendar that everybody circles. It's a good town for jazz music. Or one of our longest running musical institutions in Jersey City is a jazz jam that takes place at a bar called Moore's Place on Monticello Avenue. And Winard Harper, who is an internationally respected drummer, a tremendous drummer, who plays all over Jersey City. He hosts that jam all the time. I mean, and young musicians go there and play with him. A lot of people learn how to play that way, or learn how to appreciate jazz that way. Yeah.
What does this guy play?
He's a drummer. Winard Harper is a drummer. He's played for a long time, played with a lot of people. And
I've heard of him, but not. Yeah. I don't know if I have any albums with him. Yeah. But I've heard of him, Winard Harper.
Yeah, he's always involved in the local jazz festival. Montclair, New Jersey is a jazz town. There's a lot of jazz musicians that live there. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, you like jazz, New Jersey's a good place to be. Yeah, because there's a lot of jazz history here.
We have a little jazz club in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
And we have the Monterey Jazz Festival that's in September every year here. So that's a big thing in our area.
For me, the first music that's always going to come to mind when I think about Santa Cruz, California, is Camper Van Beethoven, because Camper Van Beethoven was a Santa Cruz, as the roots. David Lowery was UC Santa Cruz. He was originally from Virginia, but I think he went to classes at UC Santa Cruz. In any rate, the band in the 80s was really located in Santa Cruz, and they were always a little different from the bands in San Francisco. A little different from bands anywhere. I mean, they had the weirdness, the willful weirdness of Santa Cruz that I think is really cool. And it's a good. I mean, Northern California is such a wonderful musical history.
Yeah, it's true. I being a jazz fan for so long, I have a lot of favorite albums. And beginning of the year, I wrote a series of articles. I call it 72 Jazz Thrillers.
Well, I'd love to read them. You got to send me that stuff. I'd love to read that.
I'll send you a link. It's on All About Jazz, the online jazz magazine.
Cool.
But I wrote, it was 6 short reviews per article over 12 weeks.
Cool.
Which was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And so, as much as I love jazz, writing about jazz is like, for me, rocket science. It's like, how the hell do you convey a musical medium to a written medium? How do you express that? And I think most jazz reviewers fail miserably at it, in all honesty.
Nat Hentoff, interestingly, was a jazz writer before he became a First Amendment guy writing for the Village Voice. he wrote a whole lot of interesting pieces.
Oh, yeah.
About,
He wrote a lot of jazz liner notes as well.
Yeah, a lot of liner notes. Yeah, a lot of liner notes on a lot of albums. I always, as someone who I grew up, reading his articles on the Bill of Rights, I only later learned that he was a jazz journalist. When I was writing for the North Star Ledger, there was no one covering jazz, so it fell to me to do it. I was always unqualified, but for a long time there was a jazz writer. There was a jazz critic. I think it was the only jazz critic operating in New Jersey at that point. But then there wasn't, and it was on me to do it. And yes, it can be very hard, I think, to write about instrumental music, because when there is a lyrical focus, and that's a hook that a writer can immediately think about and make the grounding of the piece. So if you're writing about a pop star, chances are that pop star is writing about something very specific, and at least you can start there. Well, if you're listening to a jazz performer, you've really got to engage with the music as music, because it might be instrumental. It might be about the approach that jazz player takes to taking a solo to their other musicians. So in a way, it demands more chops out of a music critic than it would be if you were reviewing even something.
Yeah.
Even something, even if you're writing about Springsteen or a more complicated musician who has a lot to say. In a way, that's easy, because you write about, well, this is what this guy's got to say. Do you agree with it or you don't? But and then you can get into the music after that.
But jazz is about feeling. It's I'm not into vocal jazz, only instrumental jazz, and that's all feeling. And I think, a lot of jazz is, he played a really great solo here, and the piano came in, and blah blah blah. And I tried to write about use imagery about how this felt. You get images about, I don't know, all kinds of things, but really challenge. It almost broke my brain. I mean, just trying to get a sense of this music that thrills me, that excites me, that is, and anyway. So it was a good challenge. It was a good challenge for my brain.
It is. Yeah,
and now I'm sort of thinking of an article in my head of the 10 best albums I've heard this year and why they're so great.
I'd love to. Yeah.
This was a good year for jazz so far for me.
Cool.
And there's so much jazz comes out. It's like it's the least popular music, and I swear some people only sell 10 albums.
Yeah, you're probably like. I mean, if there is a pop or a rock or a hip hop album that comes out, I really want to hear it. So I always, I try to get it and listen to it, and then you're in the back of your mind, you're always thinking like, what's the best ones that you've heard this year? Because at the end of the year, you're gonna round them up and talk about what was valuable to you that year. You're gonna do that. I've been doing that forever. So you're probably the same way. Probably if there's an album that comes out that's adjacent to anything that you like, you probably scoop it up and listen to it immediately. And most of the day, I have music on, listening to albums all the way through about albums. When I'm not listening to albums, I'm on my bike, I'm thinking about albums. You're probably some.
Yeah, I'm listening all the time, and all my music is digital now, so. Which it is for most people, but I buy albums and then put them on my computer, and then I create playlists of my favorite stuff, and I have endless playlists. It's kind of an obsession. But when you're writing, I want to talk to you a little bit about the writing process, because you're a real no kidding professional writer. You're writing all the time.
I'm writing all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's your process, and how does the writing emerge from you? You've got a topic, you're interested in it, whatever it is, and it's a wide variety of things. So where do you start? And
well, the best thing to have is a deadline, because one editor that I had, it was a really is kind of a wise person. Mark Diono, who was a columnist for a long time in New Jersey, worked for a number of newspapers, told me that work expands to fit the time allotted, and I think that's absolutely true. He was like, if you have 45 minutes to write an article, you'll spend 45 minutes on the article. If you have 4 days to write the article, you're going to spend 4 days on writing the article. So
Yep.
I find that I'm most productive when I have a lot of work to do, which is kind of psychologically crazy. Like why would you do that to yourself? But honestly, it does help you be productive. If you do feel like you have an editor who you like personally and who you are going to let down if you don't get the stuff to them, it's tremendous how that's tremendously motivating. Just the feeling that you don't want to let down
Yep.
friend. So if you're writing for someone an editor who you care about personally, it really is very meaningful. It does motivate you, and it does seem to dissipate or blast the writer's block into smithereens when that's the case. Now today, for instance, I have a review that this morning when I woke up, we're discussing stuff that had nothing to do with writing. I guess everything has something to do with writing, but like nothing directly. And then I got an interview to do, and I got someplace to go, another article that I'm going to be writing later, probably tomorrow. But I know that if I don't write the review today, then I'm not going to be able to get to the other thing that I'm going to do tomorrow. And then that starts to get pretty hairy. So I guess what I do in order to prevent myself from procrastinating is just make it impossible for me not to do it. Because, I mean, if you're writing about an event, like for instance, there's this experimental film festival that's taking place this weekend. In order for that to be meaningful to the people who are involved in the festival, I got to file really soon. So I have to clear away no matter what, I got to write it. And I got very good, and I think I'm still very good at writing on trains. And writing in transit. When I'm riding my bicycle, I'll have my laptop, and I used to all the time. I would be thinking as I was riding my bike, and I jump off, write something on the laptop, and then bring it back.
Really?
Riding a bicycle, and there are a couple things that I think always help paragraphs kind of come to my head. One of them was riding a bicycle. Another was swimming. Always helped by the end of swimming. If you swim a lap or two, by the end of those laps, I always felt like I had a little. I had kind of done some in-brain editing, and I'd gotten a couple sentences in the places that I felt that they should be. And then the process is mostly just a solitary one of putting on music that's engaging, but that's not too obtrusive. That I don't want to sit and think about the entire time I'm listening to it. And then just trying not to be distracted, and just trying to have it be a complete thought, and not really taking too many breaks to change my mind. But a lot of times I write to figure out what I think about something, and that's definitely the true with writing about music, or record or a concert review. I won't really know how I feel about it, about the record, until I sit down and I write about it. And I'll write about it, and it's almost an investigation. I do an exercise every year that I think that some people find rewarding and other people find infuriating. And what it is I will take all the albums that I've listened to that year, that I know well enough to have something to say about them, which are usually about 200 albums, and I'll go through them real fast, and I will just write the first thing that comes to mind when I think about the album. And I'm not allowed to delete, and I'm not allowed to change my opinion if I'm embarrassed about it. I need to get it down, and so I do that really fast for everything. And then at the end, I have a document, which is.
So you're talking about a paragraph per album?
Yeah. Sometimes it'll be a line, sometimes it'll be multiple paragraphs. It'll depend. Whatever comes to mind when I think about that record. And I find that a really interesting writing exercise, because usually when I'm writing about an art show in the neighborhood or an art show in New Jersey, I'm being very, very careful about about what I have to say. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be misleading. I'm trying to be a responsible journalist as well as a writer with an opinion. But when I do this, if I'm writing about, you know, Lady Gaga, or I'm thinking about a new album, somebody who exists in the strata that, like, what do they care what I think, right? You're more at liberty to pop off and write the first thing that you think, and sometimes it can be really just dead wrong. And I might look back and be embarrassed if at the end of this process, which takes a couple of nights, I'm not embarrassed by some of what I've written, then I've done it wrong. But I find it I do it at the end of the year.
Embarrassed you've done it wrong?
Yeah, if I'm not embarrassed by some of what I've written, then I've definitely done it wrong. Because the idea is really to kind of clear the cobwebs out and to make to write to the moment. I was very inspired. One of the people who inspired me a lot when I was growing up was the New York sports writer Mike Lupica. And what I loved about Mike Lupica's writing was that he really did seem to be writing to the moment. He was writing about the games that he was watching almost immediately. And then when I started working in newsrooms, what I learned was that pretty much everybody does this. This is the way that sports writers write their tops. And then I started, when I was covering rock shows, I learned that this is the way that rock journalists write. Sometimes, I remember walking out of the Apollo Theater and writing my lead, because I had to file in like 5 minutes. I was writing my lead on my phone, and in a crowded room, everybody was walking to the exit. And it was actually not that unusual, and we've done that from festivals. But you kind of get to. It's helpful to have a time to allot yourself some time to write what's on the top of your head, your first reaction, your first opinions. I found that can be really helpful. And you can learn a lot about what you think and maybe what your prejudices are, and some areas that you need to work on. And then, like, I'll share it with people, because I don't mind being pilloried in front of the community. Like, if people want to say, like, I can't believe you said that thing, that's crazy, I'm totally fine with that. But yeah, so I do that every year. And I've been doing it for many, many years. And there's an archive of my off the cuff, obnoxious first blush opinions that kind of goes. It's sort of the evil spirit that lives alongside all of the responsible stuff that I do during the year. So the stuff that I do, or I'm trying to be a good citizen in Hudson County and write about things responsibly.
When I'm writing about jazz,
yeah,
I'm writing about. I only will write about an album that I love. I don't see a point of writing about something I don't like.
But don't you ever discover that you don't like something while you're writing? Do you, or do you always feel like
Well, usually it's an album I've been listening to for a long time.
I mean, it's funny with me. Sometimes I can be listening to something for months and I don't know what I think about it until I actually sit down and write. And then when I do, sometimes maybe I discover that there are things about it that I don't like. Because when I make that decision, I mean, I always feel like if someone, if a musician is taking the time to put so much work goes into making an album, and howl into microphones and through amplification devices, they must really be motivated by something. And when I really engage with the album, I always try to figure out what that motivation is. And sometimes I appreciate it. In most cases, I do appreciate it, but definitely in some cases, I'll be like, wow, this individual is motivated by some things that maybe I'm not that crazy about.
Yeah,
I'll say that. But it takes me a while. Like I don't know. I often don't know. And when I look back at the things that I've written about music that I regret, things that honestly bother me to this day, it's always the same. It's always something that I reviewed because I was on deadline and it first came out. It was really popular and I had to have something to say. So I wrote about it without taking the time to live with it. And I think that is, it's bad. I think music has suffered from premature evaluation. I think it's not been great that we evaluate our records so fast. We all try to be the first out.
It's really tricky though, Tris, because music is so subjective.
Yeah.
There's some jazz albums that I think are, so praiseworthy, and some people it's like, no, I hate that. I don't, famous jazz albums. You
Yeah.
know, so
And
it's
but
an
then
interesting
yeah.
thing. You know, what is the truth? We're trying to speak a truth about something,
Mhm.
and yet it's our truth. It's
Yeah.
our experience of that particular thing, and you know, and if you're honest about that truth, that's good. But someone else could write a review about it that's their truth, you know. So
And
it's
I think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I very much like it when I read reviews that come at things from angles that I don't that I wouldn't have 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 thought about it. At the same time, I think
yeah,
that there are things about albums that are just what they are. So, for instance, uh, there and many and there are, as my junior high school librarian used to say all the time, some opinions are worth more than others depending upon how they're set up. Uh, so like there are themes in there in the albums that are there to be apprehended, and there are themes that the artist is conscious about, depending upon how deep that artist wants to go. The artist is sometimes conscious of the themes, sometimes the themes are unconscious, and it's really left up to the critic to say, well, I noticed this pattern that's going through your record. Like, I notice you keep referring to this, or I notice you keep making this particular musical choice or this particular change. What does this signify? Why does this keep on coming up in your music? Sometimes the artist has done that deliberately.
yeah,
Sometimes they've done it. So these are things that, so while the assessment of the record is subjective, there are many things about an album that are actually objective. And in many cases, the reviewer's job is more about engaging with that which is objective than people actually think it is. I mean, I think that one of the things that we learned in 2020 when Taylor Swift put out Folklore and Evermore, which were two albums that were very deep in the writing. They were like Springsteen albums in that there was a tremendous amount of intertextuality in the album. There were a lot of songs kept on referring to each other, and there were themes that were developed, and characters that were developed, especially over the course of Folklore, but in Evermore as well. And what we learned is that listeners really do pick up on that stuff. They really are conscious, and people will listen to albums if they're set up in that way. So, like, people did engage with the through line that did exist, and it was put in there by the artist. And I think that a lot of the critics who tried to unpack that did do a service to listeners by indicating things that if you're just giving it a cursory or superficial listen, it might not have worked on you, or it might not have registered.
yeah.
But I mean, that's all a long-winded way of saying that I do think that there's a lot that's objective that can be said about just about any album, even albums that aren't that great. So there's a lot. There's always something. So when I do that exercise, there's always something that comes to mind. Pretty much always.
I want to tell you something. A few days ago, I was reading a column by a musician who writes about music,
Mm-hmm.
and someone made a comment about an album by Ornette Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
It was done years ago, called Science Fiction.
Yeah, I know that.
And he says, "Hey, maybe best jazz album ever." And I said,
Mm-hmm.
I own it, so I went to listen to it. And I've noticed that I've never been able to get through that whole album.
Yeah,
It's really, really,
it is science fiction. It is definitely.
it's really intense. But
That's a dense album. Yeah.
yeah, it's a dense album. So
the density of musical ideas on that album is pretty.
and so part of it, it's just it's what we like. It's our makeup. It's
Yeah.
free jazz is very, very challenging to me in most cases. It doesn't anyway. But I can't say that it's not played well for what it is. I mean, it's amazing in a lot of ways. But obviously people are filtering things in a different way. It's like, oh my God, I've listened to science fiction 5,000 times, it's the best thing in the world, and I literally can't play it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Whereas some albums I played from beginning to end a zillion times and never get bored with it. So it's an interesting thing, and what is true there. But then someone will say, listen to this part really closely, you'll know. And then if you really do, it's like you can tap into that person's reality. Oh
Right.
yeah, that is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
It's and jazz is challenging for a lot of people. A lot of people say all jazz is just noise to them or just background music. And for me, it's just bringing up these excitement or emotions or makes me want to move. So anyway, it's a challenging thing to try to write about an experience, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
Why is it that some MSNBC, Fox News, same happening, completely different view of what's happening, and what's true?
I mean, when it comes to a record, like, it's the truth can inhere in the musical specifics that someone can talk about, but like the emotional specifics are going to be are going to vary from person to person. Yet there are those albums that have spoken, I think, in a similar way to many people. I think
Sure.
of many emo albums, like the first American Football album or the Hotelier album, they seem to have had a very specific emotional. They make emotional resonance across their listener. You would think that, like, what does this say? There's so many people who are responding in a similar way to this piece of music. Yeah. I mean, I
got into music early in my life, and I started listening to the Beatles when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
When the music was coming out, so that's where I was then, and then.
Yeah.
And then when I was a teenager, I subscribed to Rolling Stone when it just started, and I started really reading reviews of albums, and it was the passion often behind, this album is. I remember the first album by the band. I don't know if you've heard that, Music from Big Pink.
Yeah.
Which is an iconic album. And
Yeah.
I read about that in Rolling Stone and went, yeah, I'm going to check that out. And no one else had heard it. No one else was interested. I went, you got to listen to this. It's just so honest and truthful and beautifully done and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so that particular reviewer got the job done. He got people to go out and buy the damn album, and it became quite famous.
Or at least be aware of the band, and how that band might, exist in relation to other bands. Sometimes you read a review just to orient yourself. You don't know much about a style of music, but the reviewer can tell you, where it might fit in with other things that you've heard.
Yeah, you're always kind of looking for that in a review. Are they giving me a real sense of, I think I would like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just read a review in All About Jazz the other day, and I said, this sounds fantastic. And it was. So in your writing process, let's get back a bit at your writing process. Do you do a lot of rewriting? Do you do a first draft and a second, third, fourth, fifth? Or how does that work for you?
I gotta be honest, I don't do that a lot. I really don't. I don't do a lot of rewriting, and it was. I think it could probably be a real criticism of my approach. I write very fast, and I usually don't go back and change things.
You're lucky.
Yeah, I guess it's lucky in a way, but it's also. I mean, I don't think that my writing ever feels too slapdash. I spend a lot of time on each sentence, but most of the time is spent in my head, and once it's down, I don't tend to go back and read. No, that's not really true. There are times when I rip up. I'm much more likely to rip up and start again fresh than I am to rewrite, because in my mind, whenever I rewrite, I see the marks of I see the marks of surgery. I see the scars. And I think what I'm looking for often when I'm writing is a continuous thought that kind of came out almost as if it was written at the top, and it just. I mean, I'm looking for that. I don't want to see. I don't want to feel those sutures. I would much rather just, if I feel like no, I'm wrong about this, then I'll go and I'll rip it up and I'll start again from the top. I do actually, honestly, I do that a lot. That's not really revision in the way that a high school English teacher would tell you that you should revise. So I'm not telling people not to do revision because I know it's very valuable. To be totally honest, I don't do a lot of it. And when you're writing for a newspaper, as you probably know, a lot of times your editor will tell you to tear up and rewrite your lead. And then you got to do it because your editor tells you to do it. But it doesn't make you happy to do that because you're like, okay, you need to catch your lead or you need something more punchy here. And like I've done that.
The lead is the thing that gets the first sentence that gets people's attention.
Yeah, the lead is really your top, and then there's usually a nut paragraph that can do. There's a way of writing an article for a newspaper that's just kind of generally accepted, and editors want a certain. They might feel like your lead is flat. No one's going to read past the lead because it's boring. So you need something with a better hook. In the same way that when you're making a record, your producer might tell you, like, we need to change this melody around. There's not enough of a hook here. It's not memorable enough.
Right.
It's kind of similar. A producer might tell you that when you're making a record. Very similar to the way that an editor might tell you, you got to rewrite your lead. Yeah. So the truth is, I when I'm writing on my own, I don't do a tremendous amount of revision, but sometimes people will tell you to do revision, and then I don't fight it that much. But someone's got to tell me, you got to revise here.
Has your writing become easier or harder over the years?
I think it varies from year to year. Last year, things were coming very easily. Where you're at and what else is going on in your life. When I was younger, I thought that inspiration would dry up. I'd run out of things to say. Donald Fagen says that everyone only has one idea, and the question is, how do you keep repackaging that idea? But it seems like I haven't stopped figuring out ways to repackage my idea yet, and I guess one day it may run dry. I'm always very critical of it. I'm always like, oh, geez, I can't believe I wrote it. Another thing I was told by editors was never read yourself the following day, which I think is actually
never read yourself the following day.
Yeah, don't you've written something. It's going to come out in a magazine the next day. Don't read it. Just don't read it. Just write the next thing. Don't go and read it. Drive you crazy.
You can change it, right?
There'll be a million things that you want to change, a million things that you're not satisfied with. And I always thought that was. I've always found it to be good advice. Give yourself a month before you go back and re-engage with it. But I don't think it's gotten harder necessarily. I think there are things now that I wouldn't do that maybe I would do when I was younger. Things that I would say back then that I think I would be loath to say now. I don't, because I feel like I've tried to become a better citizen and a better community member. I'm less rude, less shooting from the hip. I've tried to do that. I don't know whether that's made me a better writer, but I hope that it's made me a little less infuriating to readers. I don't know. You have to ask people who in my community who read me on the regular whether I'm still as infuriating as I used to be.
Well, I like things that are controversial, things that are look at a different angle of things. Look at something that maybe a lot of people are or missing, something that is challenging.
Yeah, I think I'm naturally a little. You're going to get something different from what you get from other people. From me, I think the challenge for me has always been how to put it in a way that isn't going to be, doesn't seem flip or unresearched or unearned. I think that the challenge for me has always been trying to earn the right to say, I think that what we're doing as a group, as a community, is not the right thing. It's not the right direction. I think you got to earn that. I think you got to earn that by being out and by being part of the community. You can't just parachute into town point fingers and be like, everything you're doing is wrong. I think that's a good way to make everyone mad at you and not listen to you. I think you got to be more than just a person at your computer. You got to be someone who's involved actively in the life of the place that you're writing. And
yes, your opinion is not just based on your feelings, but some facts, some knowledge, some understanding.
Based on that, you're part of the crew. Like basically, for lack of a better word, you're out. You're there in the club. People see you there. You're not writing this from isolation. You're actually visible. People know where you are. Maybe they see you at the grocery store. I think that's really very important in building the kind of credibility that you need to have something constructive to say about a place where maybe you don't agree with the popular with the popular consensus. In order to go against that, I think you need to stand behind your words physically as well as with the consistency when you're writing. You need to be out there. You need to be on the street corner. I think you do. I think I tried to always be like that.
Well, that's a very healthy attitude towards journalism. I mean, journalism is in deep trouble, don't you think, in many ways?
It depends on what kind of journalism you're talking about. I think journalism on the national level is probably in trouble because because the industry has closed bureaus all over the place. So people are no longer and they're relying on their sourcing is not great because they're closing their bureaus. They no longer have a man in the place that they're writing about. So you don't get the kind of thing that you used to get when you're reading a national publication. But I think I think that those national publications have lost a lot of altitude because of that. And for me, I like reading more local stuff anyway. And I think that journalism on a local level is maybe in better shape because you have to be you can't rely on, if you're doing that, no one is going to hand you a press release and ask you to copy it. I mean, maybe they will, but it's very easy to ignore it. There's not a lot of pressure to no one's going to close down the bureau for the next block over. Like the journalist still has to walk the next block over, and someone's always going to have to do that. It's so even if you're just a journalist who's involved in social media and you're just doing it in social media, I don't find that as interesting as someone who writes. But then I'm a writer, so obviously I'm going to find writing more interesting. But just in the act of journalism, covering local stories or being present to a local community is, I think, alive and kicking, at least for now, in a way that these national publications, they either need to find a new source of money in order to pay reporters, or they're just going to have to continue to rely on what they rely on. I think that in the big papers, to be honest, a lot of times what they rely on is either government or sometimes either intelligence services. You'll see what they send out, and sometimes police forces will do it as well. You don't get the story from the street. You get an official story, and you get re-reporting an official story, and it's no surprise why people have started to be like, well, this doesn't have the ring of truth to it. This doesn't feel like it has much validity. This feels like just a line that somebody is pushing. And then you have,
right.
As I'm sure as you alluded to before, there's a lot of political polarization in the country, and the two parties are constantly sending out press releases, and they're constantly sending out their talking points, and everything that they want to stand for is filtered through those talking points, a lot of which have been market tested. So you start to feel like you're in a commercial. You're not really dealing with journalism anymore. So they're going to need to. So if national organizations want to rebuild themselves, they're going to need to rebuild themselves by making an investment in reporting stories the only way that they really can be reported, which is getting a guy walking around talking to people. It's really the only way you can report a story. Actually, have somebody go in and talk to people on the street. But locally, there's no other way to tell the story than to have somebody walking around on the street. So if you're dealing with local journalism, you're dealing with something you're starting out at a much higher level of integrity, which is the reason why it's a lot more interesting to me as a thing to do than I never really seriously considered being someone who wrote about the Whitney wrote, the Whitney's first show was America's Hard to See. Grappling with that. I mean, I've done that sometimes through music, but I never really wanted to be that kind of reporter. It always seemed much more interesting to me to write about the area around me. Sometimes that's been the state, sometimes it's been my county, sometimes it's been my neighborhood. But I think it's that kind of journalism is still maybe not in the rudest of health, but it's still totally accessible and very readable and very interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's good news.
Yeah. That's just my optimism. Maybe other people might sharply disagree with that. And maybe publishers who have to lay out the money for local publications might sharply disagree with that. As a reporter, as a writer, I just find that interesting.
So, Tris, what ultimately is your vision for what you're about?
Well, what I would like more than anything else is for us to have more unity as a town. I would like us to pay attention to what everyone is doing and really listen harder to music and look harder at the art that we're making and really observe keenly and pay close attention to what our neighbors are up to. And I think that through the efforts that I've done, I'm going to flatter myself a little by saying that I have made an intervention. I think in many ways, Jersey City is a closer place than it was when I first came here. Now, was that me? I don't think it was me, but I think I did make my contribution. I think I've chipped in. What I envision for the future is a town where we are writing, where we have the confidence, because sometimes we lack confidence, to do our own thing and to really understand who we are through the artwork we make, understand who our neighbors are, and to really be able to listen to the stories of the people around us without prejudice and with respect, because respecting other people's stories is, I think, the heart of listening to the heart of art appreciation. What you're really doing when you walk around a gallery or when you listen to a record is you're opening yourself up to a different way of viewing things. And I think in a place like this, we've made strides toward a kind of workable pluralism where it isn't really people at each other's throats the way it used to be. It's more respect. And I think that comes from, I think it can only come from close engagement. So I think criticism is really necessary. Someone needs to go and react and be the first reader or be the first listener and be like, you got to check this out. And I think through that, we've become closer. And I'd like to think that can be done with the whole state, because New Jersey is an extremely special place. A lot of educated people here. There's a lot of weird people here, a lot of really interesting people here. If you look at the history of popular music, the through line of popular music goes right through the heart of New Jersey. It really does. We have had, because American rhythm and blues and gospel, we have a long-standing gospel tradition. Frank Sinatra taught a lot of people about what pop song phrasing was, how to deliver a song and tell a story. Sarah Vaughan. I mean, you can go on and on about the way that music has gone through New Jersey. We can talk about why that is, but it really is true. I mean, a lot of the music that a lot of what we think of as pop musical conventions were forged here, and we ought to be proud. We ought to recognize that. We should be proud of that, and we should also continue to pay attention and make it possible for the next generation of musical innovators to feel at home here, to be able to afford to live here. We want to take care of these people. And arts innovators, we want to take care of our artists because our artists have done a lot to help us understand who we are. New Jersey has always been a place where the arts have flourished, and I think that will always be, even if it's sometimes embattled. But I think we can do a lot to make to open our eyes and ears and to be more attuned to what our neighbors are up to. So yeah, I mean, my vision is really to be part of that and to foster that. And I think that I'd like to think that I'm seeing some evidence that it's actually working. It's mine. I give the credit for that to my neighbors, not to me, but I'm doing my part. I keep doing my part.
Tris, it's been great speaking to you. I could speak to you for a long time about this kind of stuff with our interest in music, but
what I hope you'll do is send me that list of your favorite jazz albums this year, because it's a style of music that I don't know as much about. So please send them. I want to listen to those records.
Yeah,
send that. Yeah, I want to see.
So thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview.
You're welcome. All right.